always been a fan of historical fashion, but after watching Coco Vid, I've been wanting to make my own costume outfit. I'm yet undecided as to what era I want to concentrate on. To be honest, I love everything from medieval right the way up until the 1900s. Basically any dress with a bodice, big fluffy skirts, lacing, pretty trims. I love it all. So while I indulge in Pinterest and try and decide what kind of dress I want to make, I thought I'd concentrate on some undergarments first. So I thought pretty much all dresses are going to need a petticoat. It also seems to be one of the easiest things to start with, so I thought I'd start there. I'm also undecided on if I want to go for full historical accuracy or whether I want to make sort of more of a history bounding type outfit, because right now obviously you can wear your costumes as much as you want because we're not really going out very much, but I want to make something that's going to last me years and years, so I'm going to make both. For the history bounding petticoat, I'm going to make it gathered waist. I'm going to make it gathered all the way around. I'm going to make it by machine, so hopefully it should be a nice quick project as well. But then it also means that it could pass as a maxi skirt for when I'm not in costume. But I am also going to make a historically accurate one, which I'm going to make by hand. Let's get started. So for materials, what I've decided on is just some normal 100% cotton bed sheets. This was actually a reversible bed sheet that I bought from Asda. It was only £12. And what I did was I just cut around where all the serged edges were. So then I have two bits of fabric which are 200 by 200 centimeters. The only worry I do have is it's not great quality because obviously supermarket, but it is slightly sheer. So I mean, we'll see how it goes with all of the, once it's gathered. I mean, it might look okay, but we'll find out. If need be, I will have the pillowcases so I could sort of make a lining with that, but I am going to use the full fabric for making the skirt because I want the petticoats as big as possible. So that was one side, it was like a black one, and then the grey one. It's a little stiff as well, but I'm assuming that's just because it's starched and I haven't pre-washed it yet. But the grey one seems to be a bit thicker than the black one, so I'm going to use the grey for the historically accurate one, because I also think you'll be able to see the pleating a bit nicer. It'll look a bit nicer in the grey, and I also think grey will be easier on my eyes for hand stitching. If knitting is anything to go by, seeing stitches, black threaded stitches on black fabric is going to be really difficult. So I'm going to do this one for the historically accurate one, and then this one for the history bounding. And I also think a black maxi skirt is something I would probably wear a bit more, and is going to go with more outfits than say the grey one. So let's get to chopping. So your basic petticoat is just 2 squares with a waist tie that goes around both, and then you sew up both sides together, leaving a gap for you to step in, and then you use the ties to tie them both. So effectively it's sort of my very crude drawing will look like that. And for the measurements, I would say you would need it to be at least double your widest point, whichever point that will be, probably the hips, at least double, but if you can, 3 times, but for mine I'm just going to go with the width that the bed sheet is, which a double bed is 200 centimeters by 200 centimeters, so mine's just going to be 200 centimeters. And then for the length, so for me the length needed to be about 93 centimeters, plus I was just going to say 5 centimeters for hemming at the bottom, so a meter was fine. So for me that's just going to be 1 meter, which makes me feel very short, but if you're like me, 5'2", that might be enough, so be great. Then I'm going to get two petticoats from 1 bed sheet, hopefully, fingers crossed. So the first thing I did once I have my 2 squares was to add 2 rows of basting stitches at the top of each piece for gathering. I used the widest stitch on my machine and just used the foot as a guide for making the second line. Then it was time to pull on the back thread to gather the pieces. I gathered them to just bigger than half of my waist measurement, holding up to myself often. Once I had it where I needed it, I tied a knot in the threads and did the second piece to match. Then was the painstaking task of trying to make the gathering look even. I think next time I will mark my measurements on my binding and gather using the technique I used in my elastic waist skirt for more even gathers. I will link that tutorial in the cards and in the description box for anyone else who struggles with this gathering technique. So because I know that my skirt is going to be a bit too long, because I'm not very tall, what I've done is I've just marked the extra length just using a white pencil, and then I'm just going to chop that off, and I'm going to use that as the bias binding and the ties for the top. If you need the full length of the fabric, you could just use bias binding. In the end, I actually regretted cutting off this bit, as once I had my corset on, it raised the height of the skirt and is actually too short now. So learn from my mistakes and always wear the correct undergarments when making your historical clothing. I may see if I can get some pretty back lace to add to the bottom to lengthen it a little. If anyone knows of any good websites to get lace from in the UK, please leave a comment below. I've been burned by eBay lace before. Strangely, I don't seem to have any footage of attaching the bindings, but I attached it as you would bias binding, by sewing it flush with the top, then folding it over and sewing it closed with a top stitch. Next I sewed up the side seams. I left a 30cm gap from the top and tried it on. Again, I should have put my corset on to do this, as I decided 30cm was too much and I did close it up more, which I now regret, as the hole is more covered by my bodice and completely covered when wearing my corset on top for a more Tudor style dress. I was quite happy with the coverage, so decided not to do a lining, although after watching the end footage back, in future I will try for a more opaque fabric, as this petticoat is quite chilly and a little more see-through on the bottom than I would like. And then for the last step, I did decide to flat fell my seams open. I started by turning the opening edges over on themselves and pinning down, then working my way down the full skirt. This was done on either side of both seams, and I really liked the results, especially on black fabric, as the stitches cannot be seen, but I have 3 rows of stitching holding each seam in place and no risk of frayed edges. This petticoat should last me many a year, and the wonderful clothing style will mean regardless of weight loss again, it should always fit me. I'm very much a convert to this closing method and may make all of my future skirts close in this manner, historical or not. So the only thing left to do is to try it on.